Okay. So today we're diving into something that honestly kind of freaks me out a little bit.
Yeah,
Healthcare cybersecurity.
it's a big one.
It is. And prepping for this, I had no idea how much my medical records are actually worth to, like, cybercriminals.
Right.
We're talking way more valuable than credit card info.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
It's kind of crazy.
it's not just about, like, stealing your identity either, which is what we kind of think of.
Yeah.
I think most people think of, like, oh, someone's going to steal my identity. They're going to, open a credit card or something.
Yeah.
But they can use your medical history to do things like insurance fraud, even blackmail.
Blackmail, I mean, that's getting a little scary now.
Yeah.
So why is this stuff so valuable? Like, what can they actually do with it? It's not like they can drain your bank account with like an EKG or something.
Right. It's not quite that direct.
Right.
But it's think about it this way. Your medical records, they paint this really detailed picture of your life. All your health conditions, medications, your social security number is usually in there.
Yeah.
Criminals can use this information in ways we're really just starting to understand.
So they're exploiting vulnerabilities that, like, we don't even know exist.
Exactly. And the scary thing is, this information, it's out there.
Yeah.
One of the articles I was reading mentioned this ransomware attack on Change Healthcare. It was just last year in 2024.
Okay.
100 million patient records were exposed.
100 million. That's like,
It's almost a third of the U.S. population.
that's a huge chunk of people.
It is, and it really highlights just how vulnerable the healthcare industry is.
Yeah.
I think we tend to think about cybersecurity in terms of, like, financial institutions.
Yeah, banks and stuff.
Right, but hospitals, clinics, they're all prime targets now.
And the cost for these organizations, I mean, we're not just talking about, like, bad press here.
No, we're talking about huge fines.
Yeah.
High PA violations.
I pay.
Those breaches of patient privacy laws can result in millions of dollars in fines.
Wow.
The financial impact can be crippling for these organizations.
Okay, so we've established that this data is super valuable. The stakes are high. But how do these breaches actually happen? One article pointed to something that I thought was really surprising. The technology itself, medical devices, I rely on them, but how do they become a security risk?
So it's not always about the device itself being hacked, although that can happen.
Okay.
What's more common is that hackers will use these devices, think like pacemakers, insulin pumps, even imaging machines, as a way to get into the hospital's network.
So they're using the side door to break into Fort Knox.
Exactly. They're not going for the gold in the,
Right.
in the device itself. They're using it as a stepping stone to get to the bigger prize, which is the network.
Right, so they're kind of bypassing all the security.
Exactly. And a lot of these devices have weaker security protocols.
Right.
Just by the nature of what they are, so that makes them an easier target.
So once they're in, then they can access all the good stuff, the patient databases, financial systems, all that.
All of it, yeah, the whole works.
Wow, and it's not just the devices themselves. I was reading about how outdated software systems can make hospitals especially vulnerable.
Absolutely, it's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to fight off a modern-day cyber attack with, like, Windows 95.
Oh my gosh, that's like fighting with a butter knife.
Exactly. Some hospitals are running on systems that are literally decades old.
Wow.
They're riddled with vulnerabilities that hackers can exploit so easily.
So we've got vulnerable devices, outdated systems. What about the people on the front lines, the doctors, the nurses, the administrative staff?
Yeah, the human factor. That's arguably the biggest vulnerability of all.
Yeah, one of the articles called it the weakest link.
Wow.
It mentioned how healthcare staff, they're amazing at their jobs,
Oh, they're incredible.
but they often lack cybersecurity training.
And it's not their fault.
Right.
They're focused on patient care, which is, as it should be. But this makes them prime targets for phishing scams.
Phishing, meaning those tricky emails that try to get you to, like, give up your passwords or click on bad links.
Exactly. We've all been there, right? That email that says you want a free cruise or your account's been compromised.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, oh, no.
I may have fallen for a few of those myself.
We've all done it.
It's embarrassing.
It happens. But in a hospital setting, one wrong click can be devastating.
Oh, wow.
It can unleash malware compromise, whole systems, expose all that sensitive patient data.
And it's not just phishing, right? It's also those everyday oversights, like using weak passwords, sharing logins, things we know we shouldn't do, but we get lazy about.
Yeah, it's human nature, right? But in healthcare, those seemingly small slip-ups can have enormous consequences.
I was surprised to learn that it's not just the big, well-known hospitals that are at risk. It's also the smaller clinics. Even individual doctors' offices.
They're often seen as easier targets.
Yeah, because they probably have tighter budgets, maybe less awareness about the risks.
Exactly, and here's why that's a concern for everyone. These smaller practices can become entry points for attackers who then target the larger institutions.
Oh, so it's like a domino effect.
Exactly. A breach at your local clinic could have ripple effects across the entire healthcare system.
That's unsettling.
It is. And to complicate things further, we have AI entering the scene.
Oh, yeah, AI in healthcare. I know it has incredible potential, but how does that play into all of this?
Well, it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Okay.
On one hand, AI can be used to strengthen security systems.
Okay.
But on the other
Let
hand,
me guess the hackers are using it too.
you got it.
Da-
AI-powered attacks are becoming increasingly sophisticated and harder to detect.
So even those of us who are usually pretty good at spotting a phishing email,
Yeah,
we might get fooled by an AI-generated one.
it's definitely possible these emails, they're crafted to be incredibly convincing. They're often personalized with details that are gleaned from social media or other sources.
Oh, wow. It's getting really good.
It is, yeah.
That's a game changer.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's not just phishing. AI can be used to find and exploit vulnerabilities in systems much faster than humans can.
Right.
So it's a real challenge for security teams to stay ahead of the game.
So it's like an arms race then,
It is.
with both sides constantly upping their game?
Exactly. And unfortunately, right now, it seems like the attackers have the upper hand.
Yeah.
We're seeing this sharp increase in healthcare data breaches.
Uh-huh.
And the trends are pretty grim.
Yeah, those statistics that we talked about earlier about millions of patient records being compromised.
Yeah,
It's mind-boggling.
it is. And 2023 was actually the worst year on record for healthcare data breaches.
Really?
Over 725 reported incidents,
Oh my God.
exposing over 133 million records.
It's like we're playing data roulette with our medical information.
In a sense, yeah. And it highlights this urgent need for a multi-pronged approach to address this issue.
Yeah.
We need stronger security measures, better training, and a fundamental shift in how we think about data privacy and protection in the healthcare industry.
Okay, so before we get into those solutions,
Yeah.
let's talk about what we can do as individuals to protect our own information. I think our listeners probably thinking like, okay, this is all really scary, but what can I actually do about it?
Right. Yeah, that is the million-dollar question. And honestly, it can feel really overwhelming,
Yeah.
but there are definitely things you can do to minimize your risk.
Mhm.
And a lot of it starts with being really, really cautious about what you click on.
You're talking about those phishing emails again, right?
Exactly. And with AI making them even more sophisticated, you can't just rely on like spotting a typo or a grammatical error anymore.
So how do we avoid falling for these AI-generated traps? I mean, I thought I was pretty good at spotting a fake email, but now I'm not so sure.
Right. It's a valid concern.
Yeah.
Here's a good rule of thumb.
Mm-hmm.
If an email seems even the slightest bit suspicious, just don't click on anything.
Okay.
Hover over any links to see the actual URL. If it doesn't match the sender's address or looks weird, don't risk it.
Okay, that's a good tip.
Yeah.
And what about passwords? I know it's basic advice, but it's worth repeating, right?
Absolutely strong, unique passwords for all your healthcare accounts. That's non-negotiable.
Right.
And I can't stress this enough. Don't use the same password for multiple sites.
I know. Easier said than done, though, right?
It is. I mean, how are you supposed to remember all those passwords?
Exactly.
That's where a password manager can really save you. It's like a digital vault for all your passwords, and most of them have free versions available.
Okay. I'll have to check that out. What else can we do to kind of stay ahead of all these cyber threats?
Well, knowledge is power. Staying informed about the latest data breaches and cybersecurity trends is key.
So subscribing to like the HIPAA Journal or other industry publications.
Exactly. Being aware of the tactics that hackers are using can help you be more vigilant about your own online security.
Okay, so we've talked about what individuals can do, but what about the healthcare organizations themselves? What can they do to kind of beef up their defenses against these increasingly sophisticated attacks?
Yeah, so traditional security measures like firewalls and antivirus software, they're important, but they're not enough anymore. Organizations need to invest in more advanced technologies that can actually anticipate and respond to these evolving threats.
Okay, one of the articles mentioned something called data loss prevention software. What is that?
So that's a type of software that monitors and controls the movement of sensitive data within an organization's network.
Okay.
Think of it like a security guard for your data, making sure it doesn't leave the building without authorization.
Got it.
It can help prevent those insider threats too, whether they're accidental or intentional.
That makes sense. What about AI? We talked about how hackers are using AI, but can it be used to fight back as well?
Absolutely. AI can be a real game changer in cybersecurity.
How so?
It can analyze massive amounts of data to detect patterns that might indicate malicious activity, often before humans even notice a problem.
So it's like having a superpowered detective working for you 24/7.
Exactly. And AI can also be used to automate a lot of those security tasks,
Okay.
freeing up human analysts to focus on the more complex threats.
So we're fighting fire with fire in a way.
Exactly.
But it sounds like it's not just about technology, it's also about the people, right?
You're absolutely right. The human factor is still crucial.
Okay.
Even with the most advanced technologies, we need well-trained staff who are aware of the risks and know how to respond to them.
Earlier, we talked about how busy healthcare staff often lack that cybersecurity training.
Right.
What can be done to improve that?
I think we need to move beyond those dry annual security trainings that everyone just dreads.
Yeah, the ones where you just click through the slides and hope you remember something.
Exactly. We need to make security training more engaging and relevant to healthcare workers' daily lives.
So like interactive simulations, real-world case studies, maybe even some gamification.
Exactly. We need to make security a part of the culture, not just a box to be checked.
Okay, so organizations need to invest in technology training, create a culture of security awareness. What about the role of government? Can policy changes help strengthen healthcare cybersecurity?
Absolutely. Stronger data privacy laws are essential. HIPAA, the main U.S. law governing patient privacy.
Right.
That was a good start, but it was passed back in 1996 when the digital landscape was vastly different.
Yeah, it didn't really anticipate things like cloud computing or the explosion of all these connected devices.
Exactly. Updating HIPAA to address these emerging threats would be a huge step forward.
Okay, what else can be done on the policy front?
Promoting collaboration and information sharing between healthcare organizations and government agencies is crucial.
Why is that so important? Don't organizations already share information about cybersecurity threats?
Some do, but it's not as widespread or systematic as it needs to be.
Okay.
We need a more coordinated approach where everyone's sharing information about vulnerabilities, attack patterns, best practices.
So it's like creating a cybersecurity intelligence network.
Exactly, and government agencies can play a key role in facilitating that kind of information sharing and collaboration.
You know, one thing that keeps coming up in the research is this tension between security and privacy.
Yeah.
Is how do we protect patient data without creating unnecessary barriers to care or hindering medical research?
Right. It's a delicate balancing act.
Yeah.
We want to safeguard sensitive information, but we also don't want to create a system where doctors can't access the information they need to provide timely and effective care.
So how do we find that sweet spot?
Well, one approach is to adopt a principle-based approach to data governance.
Okay.
It's about establishing clear guidelines for how patient data can be collected, used, and shared, while always prioritizing privacy and security.
Yeah.
Transparency and accountability are key.
So making sure that patients understand how their data is being used and they have control over their own information.
Exactly. And this approach can also help build trust between patients and healthcare providers, which is essential for a healthy healthcare system.
Okay, so we've talked about the role of technology, the importance of training, the need for policy, changes this balance between security and privacy.
Yeah.
But there's another dimension to this conversation that we haven't really touched on yet: ethics.
Yeah, you're right. It's not just about having the right technologies or policies in place. It's also about using them responsibly and ethically.
And this feels especially relevant when we're talking about AI.
Yeah.
I mean, these are incredibly powerful tools.
Yeah.
They can be used for good or for bad. So how do we make sure that AI is being used ethically in healthcare cybersecurity?
Yeah, that's a crucial question. We need to think carefully about the potential biases built into AI algorithms, the risk of unintended consequences, the need for transparency and accountability.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about the values and principles that guide its development and its use.
Exactly, and this raises another important question. How do we make sure that the people developing and deploying these AI systems are themselves guided by those ethical considerations?
It's almost like we need a Hippocratic oath for cybersecurity professionals.
I like that analogy.
Right.
And in fact, there are already ethical codes and guidelines for cybersecurity professionals, but they're not always well known or consistently enforced.
Yep.
We need to do a better job of integrating ethics into cybersecurity education and training.
So instead of just teaching the technical skills, We also need to instill that sense of ethical responsibility in the next generation of cybersecurity professionals.
Exactly. We need to create a culture where those ethical considerations are baked into every decision-making process, not just an afterthought.
As we talk about the future of healthcare cybersecurity, I keep thinking about this broader societal conversation we're having about data privacy and security in general.
Right.
This isn't just an issue for healthcare.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. We're seeing it with social media, government surveillance. The use of facial recognition technology and healthcare is really at the heart of this.
Yeah, it is.
Because the information it holds is so personal and potentially damaging.
Absolutely. And as technology continues to advance at this exponential pace, this debate is only going to become more intense and more consequential.
And it's a debate that we all need to be a part of.
Yeah.
Not just policymakers or technologists, but everyone who cares about their own privacy and the future of healthcare.
Absolutely.
So with that in mind, let's shift gears a bit and talk about what's on the horizon in the world of healthcare cybersecurity. What new threats and solutions are emerging?
It's an exciting and honestly somewhat daunting area to explore. The threats are constantly evolving, but so are the solutions.
One thing that keeps popping up in the research is this idea of quantum computing. Can you explain what that is and why it's relevant to cybersecurity?
So imagine a computer so powerful that it can crack current encryption methods in seconds.
Wow.
That's the potential of quantum computing.
Okay.
It's still in its early stages, but it has the potential to revolutionize many fields, including healthcare.
And that includes cybersecurity, for better or for worse, right?
Exactly. On the one hand, quantum computing could be used to create incredibly secure encryption methods that are virtually unbreakable. But on the other hand,
hackers could use it to break into any system they want.
Exactly. It's a potential security nightmare, but also a potential breakthrough. The cybersecurity community is already working on quantum-resistant encryption algorithms to prepare for this eventuality.
Okay, so quantum computing is definitely something to watch. What other emerging trends are on your radar?
Well, another technology that has the potential to really revolutionize healthcare cybersecurity is blockchain.
Blockchain. Isn't that the technology behind cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin?
Yes, but it has applications far beyond that.
Okay.
Think of blockchain as a digital ledger that's decentralized and tamper-proof.
Okay.
It can be used to create a secure and transparent record of patient data, making it much harder for hackers to steal or alter information.
So it's like having a digital fortress for medical records.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And while blockchain is still a relatively new technology, it's already being explored for a variety of healthcare applications.
Such as?
Secure data sharing, patient identity management, even drug supply chain, tracking the possibilities are really exciting.
It sounds like blockchain could be a game changer in healthcare cybersecurity. What about biometrics? I'm seeing more and more healthcare facilities using things like fingerprint scanning and facial recognition.
Yeah, biometrics can definitely enhance security and improve patient identification. But as with any new technology, there are privacy concerns that need to be carefully considered.
Like who has access to that biometric data and how's it being used?
Exactly. We need clear guidelines and regulations to ensure that that data is being used responsibly and ethically.
Okay, so we've got quantum computing, blockchain, biometrics. It seems like the future of healthcare cybersecurity is going to be a wild ride. What's the key takeaway you want our listener to remember about all of this?
I think this technology is constantly evolving, and so are the threats. But it's not just about keeping up with the latest gadgets or software.
It's the people, right?
Exactly. It's about creating a culture of security awareness where everyone understands the risks and takes responsibility for protecting patient data. It's about educating ourselves, being vigilant, and advocating for stronger privacy protections.
As we were prepping for this deep dive, we came across a study that I thought was really insightful.
Oh, yeah?
It looked at the impact of electronic health records, or EHRs, on data breaches.
Right.
And it basically found that while EHRs have a lot of benefits, they've also made healthcare organizations more vulnerable to these data breaches.
That makes sense. EHRs contain a wealth of sensitive information, and if they're not properly secured, they're a prime target for hackers.
Right. And the study highlighted some of the key challenges that healthcare organizations face in securing those EHRs, things like lack of resources, outdated technology, and inadequate staff training.
It's a reminder that simply implementing new technology isn't enough.
Right.
We need to invest in the infrastructure, the training, and the ongoing support to make sure that those EHRs are being used securely and effectively.
One specific type of cyber attack that I find particularly concerning is ransomware.
Yeah, ransomware has become a major threat across a lot of industries.
Huh.
But it's particularly worrisome in healthcare because the potential for disrupting patient care and even putting lives at risk is just enormous.
Can you explain how a ransomware attack typically works? I think a lot of people have heard the term, but they might not fully understand what it entails.
Sure. So in a ransomware attack, hackers essentially take control of an organization's computer systems.
Okay.
They lock them up and demand a ransom to restore access.
And that ransom is usually paid in cryptocurrency, right? Like Bitcoin?
Often, yes, cryptocurrency makes it more difficult for authorities to track those payments.
Right.
And because hospitals are often willing to pay to avoid disrupting patient care, they become prime targets.
It's a terrifying thought. Imagine a hospital's entire system being shut down in the middle of a critical surgery or a mass casualty event.
Exactly. The stakes are incredibly high, and it's a really tough situation for these healthcare organizations.
Yeah.
Do they pay the ransom and risk encouraging more attacks, or do they refuse to pay and potentially put patients' lives in danger?
It's a lose-lose situation. So what can be done to prevent these ransomware attacks?
Well, it's a multifaceted problem. But some key steps include investing in really robust cybersecurity defenses, regularly backing up data and training staff to recognize and avoid those phishing emails.
Right.
Because that's often the entry point for ransomware attacks.
So it sounds like a lot of the same advice we've been discussing for preventing data breaches in general also applies to ransomware attacks.
That's right. A strong cybersecurity posture is the best defense against all types of cyber attacks.
You know, as we've been talking about these emerging threats, it's clear that we're in this constant game of cat and mouse with the cybercriminals.
We are.
They're always finding new ways to attack, and we're always trying to stay one step ahead.
It's an ongoing arms race, and the bad guys are getting more sophisticated all the time.
Especially with AI becoming more powerful and more accessible.
Exactly. AI is that double-edged sword. It can be used to create incredible new technologies, but it can also be used to create incredibly powerful cyber weapons.
And it's up to us as a society to make sure that AI is being used for good, not for harm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We need to think very carefully about the ethical implications of AI and develop safeguards to prevent its misuse.
And that's going to require a collaborative effort involving policymakers, technologists, ethicists, and the public at large.
It's a complex challenge, but it's one that we can't afford to ignore. The stakes are just too high.
You know, throughout this deep dive, we've been emphasizing that healthcare cybersecurity is not just about technology, it's about people.
That's right. Technology plays a vital role, but ultimately it's people who make decisions, who take actions, and who are responsible for protecting patient data.
And it's people who suffer the consequences when things go wrong.
Absolutely, and that's why it's so important to create that culture of security, awareness, and responsibility in healthcare.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that cybersecurity is everyone's job, not just the IT department's responsibility.
Exactly.
One of the articles we read for this deep dive made a really interesting point about the importance of communication.
Yeah, communication is key in any field, but it's absolutely crucial in cybersecurity.
The article was talking specifically about the need for clear and open communication between healthcare organizations and their patients about data breaches and other security incidents.
Transparency is essential when patients know what's happening and what steps are being taken to protect their data. They're more likely to feel confident and trusting. It's about building that relationship.
And it's not just about communication with patients, it's also about communication within the healthcare organizations themselves.
Right. Different departments and teams need to be able to share information effectively so they can identify and respond to threats quickly.
And there needs to be that open communication between healthcare organizations and government agencies.
Absolutely. We need to break down those silos and foster a culture of collaboration if we're going to effectively combat these cyber attacks.
One of the things that I find particularly challenging about communicating about cybersecurity is that the language can be so technical and jargon-filled. It's a common problem, and it can be really difficult to explain these complex concepts to people who aren't technical.
Right.
And if people don't understand the risks, they're less likely to take those steps to protect themselves.
So how can we bridge that communication gap?
Well, one approach is to use analogies and metaphors to explain technical concepts in a way that's more relatable and easier to understand.
Like we did earlier when we compared polymorphic malware to a chameleon or described blockchain as digital fortress.
Exactly. Those kinds of analogies can really help people grasp the concepts and remember them.
Yeah, and it's not just about the words we use. It's also about the tone.
Oh, tone is crucial. We need to be clear and informative, but we also need to avoid being alarmist or overly technical.
We want to empower people to take action, not paralyze them with fear.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between conveying the seriousness of the threats and providing practical advice that people can actually use to protect themselves. And that brings us back to that point you made earlier about the need for a multi-pronged approach to healthcare cybersecurity.
It's not a problem that can be solved by any one group or any one technology.
It's going to take healthcare organizations, government agencies, tech innovators, even individual patients all working together.
Absolutely.
But I'm wondering if we need to take that idea a step further.
Oh, how so? Yeah, what if we did?
What if we start thinking about healthcare cybersecurity as a fundamental human right? You know, we talk about the right to privacy, the right to security, like in our physical lives. But in today's world, our health information, it's so tied to our digital identities. Shouldn't we have that same level of protection for that information?
You know, when you think about the consequences of a data breach, identity theft, financial ruin, even just the erosion of trust in the healthcare system, it becomes clear that these aren't just technical issues, they're human rights issues.
Exactly. And if we frame it as a fundamental right, the right to control our own health information, the right to be protected from harm as a result of these data breaches, it raises the stakes. It demands a more comprehensive and ethical approach to cybersecurity.
It's a really powerful way to reframe the issue. I think it's a conversation that needs to happen on a much broader societal level.
I agree. We need to be having these discussions, not just in, the halls of government or in tech conferences, but like in our homes, in our communities everywhere. This is about the future of healthcare. It's about protecting what's most precious to all of us, our health, our privacy, our dignity.
Well said. I think that brings us to the end of our deep dive.
It has been a journey, and I hope our listener has come away feeling a little bit more informed, a little bit more engaged, and maybe even a little bit inspired to be part of the solution.
I agree. We've covered a lot of ground, but this is really just the beginning of the conversation. Healthcare cybersecurity is an ongoing challenge, and it's going to take all of us working together to create a more secure and trustworthy future for healthcare.